Welcome back to the High Ticket Woman. Debbie Caudle here, your host. Today's episode is another Q&A, and the questions I'm sharing come from very real couples, very real situations, and, typical places that see in the work that I do, places of confusion and frustration and pain. And you may feel like, when you hear the questions for today, you might feel like, this doesn't pertain specifically to me, but I want you to listen below the actual surface question because the issues that are coming out through these questions are much deeper than what they might initially seem like. Each one of these questions touches on something that many couples, including possibly you, experience, but you don't always know how to talk about. So today we're going to be talking about things like power and leadership, emotional responsibility, blended families, and what happens when two people see the same situation but completely different, which is pretty much every marriage that I know about. So as you listen, I want you to notice which question is stirring something in you. Okay. That usually tells you an area of growth, potential growth in your marriage. And remember, you can write in and you can pose your own question for me. The best way to do that is probably to email me so that it's anonymous, on private, Debbie@debbiecaudle.com. And remember, Caudle is spelled Caudle. So Debbie@debbiecaudle.com. And I will answer your question or questions anonymously. I will answer them in a broad enough context so that everybody can benefit from them and that there will be no identifiable information about you given. You can give me as much detail as you want, but I will only share what is necessary to answer the question. So let's dive into question one today. This one on the surface might seem really lighthearted, but again, invite you to look underneath the surface of this question to see what's really being asked. So a woman asked me the other day, or we'll get to the question, but a little bit of context. She said, "My husband and I love to go dancing. I'm a very good dancer and he's not. I try to help him, but he gets frustrated and defensive. He says he should be the one leading and that it feels disrespectful when I try to guide him. I don't understand why this is such a big deal. It's not like I take over the marriage in any other way. He's very much in charge. Um, I just I just want to be able to enjoy myself out on the dance floor and he doesn't really know what he's doing." Okay. So her question basically is, why does he get upset when I try to teach him how to dance? So, on the surface, this seems like a pretty lighthearted question, but this question isn't really about dancing. It's about identity and vulnerability. Because you see, for many men, especially those who value leadership, their competence is deeply tied to their self worth. So, when a man is placed in a situation where he feels exposed, inexperienced, or publicly unsure of himself, especially if that's in front of his spouse, that can be a very sensitive thing for him. So what he's reacting to isn't you wanting to help him dance, okay? It's the message that he hears that he's failing at something that he should be good at or that you want him to be good at and he's not. Now, it may not be your intention to communicate that, but for many men, being led by their partner, especially in a public situation or in a skill-based setting, you know, uh, where he has to be good or not good at something, this is gonna trigger feelings of inadequacy or embarrassment, okay? And he's not necessarily doing anything wrong, but if he's identified his role in this marriage as being good at things, and you're pointing out to him in this way that he's not good at something, then that's what's going on here, okay? So it's not that you're wrong for wanting to enjoy something that you love, speaking to the person who submitted this question. And he's not wrong to feel sensitive, okay? But the situation here requires something a little different than correction, like, "Why won't you let me lead? I'm a better dancer than you." It requires something softer, okay? So I would try something like this, not on the dance floor, at a different time. I would try saying to him, "I love dancing with you, and you know how much dancing means to me. Would you be open to us practicing our dancing together sometime? Just for fun. Maybe we could actually go take some dance lessons. I know you wanna lead, um, and I think we would both enjoy this a lot more if you and I both felt like we knew what we were doing together a little bit more on the floor. What do you think? Okay. What this does is this shifts the energy from I'm going to teach you how to do something that you're clearly not good at, and the whole world gets to see that you're not good at it because I'm clearly leading you, to hey, this is an opportunity for us to connect, not in a public setting. I mean, unless we're go take dance lessons, but for us to work on this together and we can have fun. And then when we show up on the dance floor in front of all our friends and family, they get to see us enjoying ourselves and connecting in a way that we weren't before. Okay. So really the key here is what message are you actually communicating to him in the way that you talk to him about this? And what is he actually hearing when you're trying to lead? Always, 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 there's the surface issue, and then there's the deeper underlying issue that is being heard by both of you. Try to get to that deeper issue. Okay, question 2. This one's a little heavier, and this one I can really personally relate to. Question 2 comes from a woman who's in a blended family, and she's feeling really, really discouraged. Her husband was married before her, and he has adult children. And now he and her have their own younger children biologically together. And she says that she has made efforts to be kind and respectful and welcoming to the adult children, her stepkids, but they remain distant and in some situations openly resistant. And what hurts her most is that her husband seems to expect her to bridge the gap, even though she feels like she's done everything she knows how to do. Well, believe it or not, this situation is far more common than you might realize, and it is deeply painful. And I think the first thing that we need to say and be really clear about is that you cannot expect fairness in a situation like this. I know our brain knows this, like life isn't fair, but this is one of those areas where, as the second wife, as the stepmom, and this is true for stepdads too, you're going to be dealing with a lot of what feels very unfair. Okay. So you cannot force closeness where it doesn't want to be. All right. So a lot of times in these situations, there's unresolved grief. There's, loyalty issues that create conflict. There's resentment maybe over how the first marriage ended. The children can take sides even if they don't have all the facts, and often they don't. Adult children can carry unspoken emotions when a parent remarries. Unspoken because, it's not easy or normal or natural to feel like you can go to your mom or your dad and say, "Hey, I don't like that you've remarried," even though it's not that I expect you to be alone for the rest of your life. I still have these mixed up, confused feelings about you now being remarried, okay? Especially if the divorce was painful or confusing or never fully processed, or you've got one one ex complaining still about their ex-spouse. If they are really, resentful and bitter and looking for every opportunity to run their ex down to the adult children. I mean, that's just the reality. These things happen all the time. So even when you as the stepmom, you've done nothing wrong, you still represent change, loss, and replacement in the minds of these adult children. And that doesn't make the way they're treating you fair, but it does help to understand why this is going on. Now, what becomes really unhealthy is when your husband, the biological parent, avoid his responsibility by shifting the emotional burden onto you, okay? And so what this situation requires are some really healthy boundaries on your part, okay? You have to help your husband take responsibility for his relationship with his adult children. It's not your job to manage their emotional reactions or chase connection. You don't have to make sure that he still is reaching out to his kids. You don't have to fix adult kids' unresolved grief over the divorce. Um, so it's up to him to say, I want a relationship with my adult kids. I'm going to be responsible for that. But I also expect my adult kids to be respectful to my new wife. Okay. That's that's what looks healthy in a situation like this. Now, as the step parent, you need to remain open. Okay. So you can say to the adult kid, I'm open to a relationship if and when you are. I'm happy to spend time together when it feels mutual, but I won't force closeness and I won't chase your approval. Okay. You're not going to abandon yourself and abandon your responsibilities to your own children, by in order to have a relationship with these adult kids. A lot of times these things take a long time. So even if you've been married a few years, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, believe it or not, it may take a lot longer than that for these things to resolve. 5, 6, 7 years isn't, in the big scheme of things, as long as you think when it comes to being able to, have adult children accept you, to get over what happened in the past, to bridge the gap between what was and what is now. But you don't have to take responsibility for things you didn't cause, for emotions they feel that were there before you came along. You can be kind, you can be respectful, and you also need to be patient, but you don't have to carry any guilt that doesn't belong to you. You're not responsible for healing wounds that you didn't create. And your husband has to do his own work in this. If there's emotional work that he has to do to heal from the divorce or heal from any damage that he did in terms of his relationship with kids, that's his responsibility. Don't choose sides, okay? This is something I think that also happens, I see a lot, is like, this is my husband, so if he's not getting along with adult kids, his adult kids, then, then I'm siding with him and they become the enemy. No, it's far more helpful for you to stay neutral and again, hold him accountable for whatever kind of relationship he wants to have with them, but do not attach your relationship with your adult children to anything that he says or does. Your responsibility lies in, again, being open, being kind, being respectful, and giving them time and space to just accept you. Okay. When handled with patience and compassion, not always easy to do, but when you do that, the situation can and usually does improve. Just don't take on the responsibility for things that don't belong to you. All right. And good luck. I know this is not easy. Believe me, I've been there. I am there. Jeff has adult daughters, and my first husband had a son. So I have walked in your shoes, and I understand, and there is no quick and easy fix to these things. All right, let's move on to question 3. All right, this question actually comes from a man, a husband, who is actually currently separated from his wife and in the middle of a divorce. And he's begun a new relationship, and he finds that his wife is upset and really struggling emotionally with this new relationship. And he's confused by this, especially because in his mind, the marriage is already over. Okay, well, I'm really glad that this question is on today's episode because I see this all the time. The ink isn't dry on the divorce, and we've already moved on. We've already found somebody else. And I think that we need to be very, very clear here as Christians. We need to live by God's standard, not by what society says is okay. All right. So if you are still married legally and covenantly, then you are married. And if you get involved romantically, sexually with another person while you are married, that's an affair. Now, I know that might be uncomfortable to hear. You might feel defensive. You might even want to argue with me about that. But clarity is more important here than comfort. From a biblical perspective, marriage doesn't dissolve just because emotionally you've removed yourself from the marriage. Okay. Communication has ended. You've emotionally checked out. Marriage is a covenant, not a feeling. And until that covenant is formally and spiritually released, you are still bound to it. So when someone enters into another relationship before that process is complete, several things happen, okay? Number 1, healing becomes virtually impossible. It's very, very difficult to grieve something that's not over when you're now involved with somebody else. You can't gain clarity. I don't care how many years you've been married. And I know you might be going, well, I know why the marriage broke up. I have thought about this for years and I know exactly. Okay, I get that. But believe me, as someone who has gone through a divorce and remarried, I am still getting clarity 7 years later from the divorce. 7 years, not 7 months, 7 years from when the divorce was final. You can't gain clarity while using another relationship to numb the pain and the disappointment of the first, which isn't even over. And you can't learn truly about what went wrong if you've already shifted your emotional energy somewhere else. Now, a new relationship feels good because we don't like being lonely. We we want to feel listened to. We want to feel understood. We want the connection. We want the companionship, but not at the expense of being healthy, not at the expense of doing what's right in God's eyes. All we're doing is we're soothing emotions, and that can be mistaken for healing, but it's not healing. Another thing that happens when we prematurely jump into another relationship before our marriage is actually over is that it really does deeply wound the spouse that we're leaving behind. Even if your marriage obviously was struggling and the separation has already begun and the relationship was far from healthy, clearly, or you wouldn't be getting a divorce, okay? Even if the relationship with this new person didn't cause the divorce, to the spouse who is still emotionally processing the loss, seeing you with someone else feels like being replaced before the marriage is even ended. It might feel like their pain, their loss is being minimized. It's kind of an undignified way to end a marriage. I don't know that you've ever thought about that, but it is. And if kids are involved, and in this situation they are, the impact is even deeper, okay? Because children don't experience separation in neat little emotional compartments. They experience confusion and loyalty conflicts and grief, and fear, and they often don't have the total verbal language to express how they're feeling, which is why there's so much turmoil going on inside of them. So you see how complicated healing gets for everyone. This isn't just about you ready to move on and, "Oh, I found this person in my life now who understands me so much better." No. When the old relationship hasn't been properly put to bed, put to sleep, properly mourned, full closure, everybody's impacted. You, the spouse that you're leaving behind, the kids, even the new person, the new partner that you've brought into this situation is going to be unwillingly, unknowingly brought into some of these unresolved dynamics and will be forever potentially linked to the separation and divorce. What do I mean when I say that? Well, your kids don't know for sure. Your soon to be ex-spouse doesn't know for sure that you weren't already emotionally involved with this person. What if they get it in their head that this new woman is one of the reasons why you want out of the marriage? No matter what you say, you're now casting a shadow on this new relationship in the eyes of your ex and your kids because you have no control over what your ex is now going to say about this relationship. So they could poison the well. They could put that idea into your kids' heads, and no amount of you saying, "Oh no, 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 I met them after the divorce proceedings had already happened." No amount of you defending yourself is going to change your kids' perspective if that's what they want to hold on to. And I'm not trying to shame you. I'm saying this is what I see over and over and over. This is such a commonplace mistake that people make. You got to be honest with yourself. Healing requires honesty. And if you're going to learn from your marriage and not repeat the same mistakes, then it also requires restraint on your part, giving yourself time and distance from the first marriage to really get clarity. As I said, 7 years later, I'm still getting insight into what did and did not happen. And there's a level of integrity that is expected of you by your kids, by the people watching you, and certainly by God. So close this chapter of your life before you start another one. Allow space for grief. I get that you're lonely. I get that you want a partner, but you gotta sit in that loneliness. Don't don't medicate it with anything, including another relationship. Do the inner work before offering your heart to someone new so that that heart is intact and whole and ready to be with somebody. What I'm asking of you is hard, and it's not what most people do. So I guess the real question you need to ask yourself is, do I wanna be like everybody else? Or do I wanna be the kind of person that God wants? Which is going to require holding yourself to a much higher standard than the world requires of you. All right. So that's our 3 questions for today. If any of these questions resonate for those of you listening, because 'cause I'm speaking to everybody here, not just these 3 people. Remember, relationship pain isn't about bad intentions. It's about misalignment and unspoken expectations and emotional blind spots. And when we slow down enough to understand the why we react the way we do, why our partner reacts the way they do, then we can create space for compassion and empathy instead of conflict. And you don't have to do all this alone. That's what we do inside Marriage in Bloom, my high touch transformative marriage intensive. This is where you learn how to communicate through understanding differences and rebuilding trust and navigating these hard conversations with clarity, with compassion, with patience. So you can learn more by going to debbiecaudle.com/marriage in bloom. That's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Please leave me a comment. Tell me what resonated with you. Reach out to me through my email, debbie@debbiecaudle.com, and give me your own questions that you want me to answer. And you never know, your question may become another podcast episode that's just specifically about your situation. I don't know. And as always, remember, you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to stay teachable. I'll see you next week.